Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. This is Are We Transforming? And my name is Tembegile Felicia Makubele. This is a platform where we come and share ideas, share different perspective on different topics. The idea is to identify gaps which, as citizens, whether in Africa or in South Africa, we can be able to find solutions. So today we have got 4 panel members who are going to talk to us about the need for small businesses to have funding or to seek funding. But at the same time, whether they have that funding or not, it shouldn't stop them from starting those businesses. So we're going to have a discussion. It's not like they know it all, but I chose them on the basis of having read some of the things they have written or having had an engagement with them. And I thought it would be best to have them on the platform to share what their view is. So the first one is Mr. MOENG. He's joining us from Switzerland. He's gonna do a short introduction. And then the second one is THABISO MONGANE. He is based in Joburg here in South Africa. We also have Mr. Mabobo Jabu. Mabobo is the surname, Jabu is the name. He's based in Zambia, but he's a South African by birth. We also have REABETSWE MOLAPO. She is based in South Africa. So I will not do the introduction because they gave me long bios, which I feel they can be able to do the summary. Unfortunately, Mr. MOENG is going to be with us for 30 minutes because they've got network issues where he is. We will start with him, but welcome. People will join us as we go. Mr. MOENG, I'll request you to do a short introduction, and then I'll allow the others to do their introductions. Then you'll have 10 minutes to indicate what is your view with regard to the topic, and then we'll take it from there. We can actually even agree, gentleman and lady, to allow him to state his view a bit longer, considering that he's going to be with us for a short period.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everybody. I also like what Sean was saying earlier. That was a very good, powerful way to start. So I'm not going to talk about myself because it's all out there. My obsession, with my passion rather for Africa has to do with the fact that just like South Africa, what they talk about, I think there's so much potential that is not being given the opportunity to thrive, and a lot of times it's because of leadership. At the core, I'm a brand management expert. I do brand management, brand reputation management advisory, and I teach at the EU Business School, as you said. And I think countries are also brands, destinations are brands. Why is it more attractive to go to America or to Italy or to France than to go to another destination in Africa? Why is it, or why do people place their money, their investments more easily in one destination and not in their other destinations? I think what we do in Africa, we have great minds, we have awesome Africans in Africa, in the diaspora, who do great things, who say great things, but there's a disconnect between what the ordinary South Africans who really, or Africans who want to get things done, where they're sitting, and where the people who connect, who control the funds and the resources and the policy, who do policy making in Africa. So it's almost like the political elite exists in a world of its own, and these great ideas that we hear about in conferences and meetings like these, they don't seem to be pushed up to those people who actually decide where the funds are going to be.
Mm.
I mean, as Africa, we should be asking ourselves, what kind of technologies do we need? What kind of investments do we need? What kind of skills do we need to propel Africa into the future, to make Africa a little bit more independent or self-reliant? I mean, and I'm going to stop now. If you think of, let's say, in the Africa Brand Summit, for instance, that I host, the main discussion was about the food value chain space, not just agriculture, not the production of food on the land, but the entire value chain space, from food processing and until it sits on the shelf, including the crossing of borders of products grown in one country into the other country, the kind of bribes that people get stopped to pay. If you don't pay now, I'm going to delay your merchandise from coming in. There's a whole lot of stuff in Africa that needs coordination at the top, but we're all over the place. And we also have these awesome discussions that we have. After that, there's no follow-up. So we speak, and next year we're going to speak again, almost repeat what we said last year. There's no follow-up. There's not. I haven't been to a conference where we say, okay, this is what we said last year. These are the things that we agreed have to happen. These are the people that we thought we agreed should be working out to make these things happen. What has happened? We don't do that. And this is really
And it's something that Africans love to do so much. It's actually quite annoying. The fact that the new crop comes in and they want to impose their grand vision and really just prove that they are the better, kind of evil that we have to actually swallow.
right.
And I mean, I've had the same debate. Let's take the FTCA into consideration. I mean, the Convener is trying to actually hire, and I said it before, hired over 200 trade negotiators to actually align monetary policy within Africa. Why? The monetary system in Africa doesn't work. Why not leverage the whole system on a blockchain-based system with immutable ledgers where there will be very little chance for corruption? And suddenly now you can actually start trading in between, continents and countries without having to actually worry about the medium of exchange being, out of the purview of regulators. And those are the things that we need to actually start debating about as Africans more than anything else. We need to aggravate these conversations. We need to aggravate them so aggressively, because what they really present is that they present opportunity for us not only to be independent, but to start self-determinating in a way that could actually put our destinies back in our hands. And that is what Africa should be at this point in juncture. I mean, the last part about it is that if you look at geopolitical and geographical dynamics in the world, you're starting to see more and more disintegration of systems, more and more decentralization of systems. We are the one continent that really hasn't, had to actually deal with a lot of that outside of really just taking financial assistance. But yet we are, we're literally, we're squandering the opportunity to actually start self-determinating independently from anyone else, because we now suddenly have the power of the internet. We can really cultivate those capabilities within our economies and really look at it from a standpoint of how do we actually build capabilities for the future of Africa. Capabilities in agri-tech, capabilities in economics, capabilities in AI, in blockchain, capabilities in all of those particular things that would make us just a powerful force to be reckoned with. And I like how you started this whole conversation and you actually mentioned the whole notion of brand. The first time I spoke on this platform, I spoke about South Africa's particular shortfalls when it comes to how we're branding ourselves and what our super capability is to the world. I mean, there's people who have referenced the National Development Plan, for instance, for me to go and find this grand idea about this, super capabilities we're trying to build. No, that's nonsense. The National Development Plan is a very poetic document, but it speaks nothing to a technical mechanism that's actually going to get us to where we want to be. I mean, if I had to ask you now, if anybody is ready what really just thinking about our winning aspiration is about. What is our winning aspiration as a country that's going to be a key differentiator for us in the entire world? That's going to give us a seat at the table where we can actually start negotiating again on those value chain dynamics that you spoke about. I mean, the climate change conference came up, and I think it was Professor Webster from the States who was mentioning these value chain dynamics in food security and how they pose a threat to, you know, countries that don't have the money, you know, to actually just, I think, integrate those value chain propositions. Now, we're sitting here and we're still not talking about, I think, the right things, you know, in our own African countries, because it's just not popular to do so. If you're not, you know, going up and I think, you know, gaslighting and doing other funny things, you are really someone who's just purported to be irrelevant. And we have to correct this, what I think is an innate kind of disability that we have within us psychologically, to really just be able to be critical, really look at the issues at hand and say that, no, don't distract us. Don't try and tell us about other sundry issues. The core component of what we're fighting for is A, B, C, and D. And that is the thing that I think the young people in this country need to start putting down as a hardcore proposition, in any other African country for that mere fact.
Yeah, I think the problem in Africa, you're absolutely correct. I agree with you. The problem with that in Africa is that we have placed politicians on a pedestal. We think we treat them like heroes, like heroes, like superstars. They don't think they save us. They think it's the other way around. And you two are not connected, you know, not united. I think African civil society, African business should say, these are the things that you guys who meet in the AU, we want to see you do these things. We need you to come up with these policies, and you need to give a responsibility to individuals who have the skills and the experience to deliver on those things. They must come back every year, or depending on the size of the project or the task. They must come back regularly to say, this is where we are at. These are the successes, these are the failures, these are the delays, and this is where we are not delaying. What kind of skills do we need in Africa to propel Africa forward? What kind of investment? What kind of technologies? We can't do this on a country by country. Of course, there are some things which different countries will lead on, but I think that at the global level, we need to say, this is what, if we imagine Africa in the next 50 years, what are the things that we want to see there? But it mustn't just be controlled by the politicians. You know, there must be serious investment and serious ways to, you know, there's got to be ways for people to be made to be given tasks and to report on those tasks and to act in the interest of Africa. A lot of people go out there to negotiate on behalf of either regions in Africa or countries in Africa, and they go off and they allow themselves to be bribed. You know, a friend of mine, and I'm not going to say this loud, when South Africa finally gave in and lent and borrowed money from the World Bank last year, the leader of the World Bank in South Africa was given a promotion because their task was to get South Africa to get money from the World Bank because of all the interest that has to be paid over the next 30 years, whatever. And as soon as she managed South Africa to sign to get money from the World Bank, she was given a promotion. I don't know what kind of deals are in there in terms of South Africa. How strong are the negotiators? The people who represent the country, all the continent out there, nobody can do this. You can. Did you see how difficult it's been for the UK to exit the EU in terms of the negotiations and what kind of post-Brexit relationship there's going to be? Because every line matters, every clause in the contract matters. But I've read stuff about how China just goes to the president to say, listen, get your person, either remove this person from your negotiating team or get him to sign that piece of paper. So we get taken for a ride by the Chinese. We sign all sorts of stuff in exchange for money, but they don't get professionals to do those negotiations. The president says, this is how you're going to sign. If you don't sign, I'm going to find somebody else to do it. So actually, we do have the professionals, we do have the skills, we do have people in Africa who can do the right thing. But by the time the order comes from the president, it's like, wait a minute, I can't sign this, but the Chinese say, no, your president sign, you must sign. It happens a lot. Read about it. It's painful. So Africa, we have to take responsibility for a lot of things that are not going right in Africa.
You know, as I'm listening to you now, I'm just reminded of what I was hearing the former president of Zambia saying yesterday about the coups in West Africa and how they get to be sort of promoted through having foreign security, what do they call it? Security companies coming to guard sort of mines within the country. But my question now will be, as a layperson who does not even have an idea of how those deals and how those signatures are going to affect me, and here I am, I need to make a living. And now, you know, the employment rate is going down in the country and almost everywhere in Africa. The young people are getting agitated by the fact that they forever get promised, no, next time there will be employment. And they are even told, no, you can start your own businesses. Government is going to fund you, but they don't get those funding, probably because of those things that you are referring to, because of those deals that have been entered into, you know, signatures having been made by government without considering how it's going to affect the people. What advice would you give to me who want to start a small business and earn a living, and also create an employment for somebody who's probably in my village? It can what you're saying can apply. It's like very high and strategic, which is good. But here I am. I want to start a business. I don't have access to funding. Funding is a challenge, probably because of those deals that the government has entered into.
Look, there are many interesting private sector initiatives. If you come with a good business idea, and now there's a lot of money that goes into startups in the IT sector, the digital space area. If you come up with ideas, then there are places. Those things do not involve governments in Africa. Private sector, people with lots of money sitting all over the world. Lion Cage. I don't know if any of you in this group knows about Lion Cage. Just maybe Google Lion Cage. You write to them. They say they invite you to come and present if they like your idea. To present to a group of big money people who are prepared, who are really looking for exciting projects to put money into. So I think, how do we make these things more visible? How do we make it easier for people to know where to go when they have an idea and they want to sell it and they want people to put money into it? Because the opportunities are there in the sector, but a lot of people don't know about that. But I do think that we can't be paying taxes to governments that do not, do anything to facilitate these things. It's all about them. Most government people will say, well, I'm happy to sign to help you, but what do I get in return? And that's the problem of Africa.
But I think that we have to look at it also from the perspective of scrutinizing private capital, specifically VC funds.
Yeah.
Look, if an American VC firm is going to give you money, one of the expectations for you to get that money is for you to go and incorporate out in Delaware, the Bay Area, somewhere in San Francisco, New York, wherever. And the real reason is that you're getting foreign dollars on that have to actually be deployed for an African startup. That's not on the fly with the American taxpayer for them to actually just accept that, look, we have a leakage of money going into Africa, but how does it reticulate back into the American economy? And that's why you see that most of these big unicorns that have actually exited through, you know, the VC space have actually got, you know, incorporations in different countries where they're actually taking money. And that's the problem with not controlling your own capital, hence, or vis-a-vis why we're actually sitting here and discussing this whole issue. The fact that taking foreign money really poses also a sovereign risk, you know, on your own, you know, turf. And we have to actually start looking at it from that angle, you know, to say that how do we actually generate and deploy internal rands for internal rand spend? And those are the critical questions that I think that we have to look at when we're speaking about the funding debacle here for small businesses. I mean, I can tell you now from my own experience, the average waiting time to actually get any form of response, for instance, from the NEF, the National Empowerment Fund of South Africa, is 12 weeks. And I sit there and I speak to the guys on the investment committee, and I ask them, like, why did you wait 12 weeks to tell me that I have to fix this and this and this and this? I mean, for me, it's senseless. It's 52 weeks in a year, and you've made me wait 12 weeks of those, which is 30%. Right. And now I have to go back and actually go and fix a proposition. What we're not really accounting for in the African context, especially in South Africa, is the fact that the lack of capital and the lack of deployment of capital is a real hindrance to the rate of innovation. And that's what's really just building, I think, great organizations out there in the world. Organizations that can actually the organizations that can actually, you know, make an impact on the world and an indent that can actually change the entire, you know, I think net impact effect of the geographies that they actually are in. And those are the specificities that we need to actually start thinking about, saying, look, yes, we want to actually have entrepreneurs who are starting businesses regardless of the fact of whether they have capital. But let's face it, we're in an economy with highly intense market concentration, right? And the only way you're going to contest the market is one of two ways. One, it's either get enough sizable capital to actually go and antagonize market share, or you're actually going to have to go the ESG route, which I detest with all of my heart, because I truly believe that no big company is going to grow you so that you can become a competitor. And those are the nitty-gritties of the landscape that we're in, that the South African battleground for small businesses is really looking that way.
No, I wanted to say maybe I should come in. I hear my colleagues and very articulate and very interesting and thought-provoking. And I asked myself just after THABISO has spoken to say, why should we go for venture capital from overseas? And yet we have our listed billionaires in South Africa. What are they doing in the space that are having small businesses? What is their contribution to that? And perhaps answering your question, Thembi, in terms of the importance of small businesses and why is it important for them to start. I'll come back to the comments my colleagues have made. I think it is important to note that, you know, when you have the small businesses operating and playing, you will have inevitably the local employment, and you will have that local income circulating in those local economies. You will have the local municipalities or local governments enjoying their taxes and all those services that you pay. And you have a collaboration and cultivating a loyal customer base in terms of that. But what makes it difficult for the small businesses to access capital, you will hear most of the time when you go and you want to get a loan, let's say from the bank, they will tell you that you don't have collateral, you don't have track record, you don't have a proper business plan, or you know you need to show a good turnover or sales and what. So when bombarded with those and you haven't worked now, you have government that has created a space that is supposed to help you fund money and bridge this gap. And you have government that also operate like commercial bank that will expect you to have all these sorts of things. And we tend to take these shortcuts and say, go to NYDA, they will give you a business plan and all that. You have service providers that have templates, they just cut, paste, give you a business plan, which when you try and go and present, there isn't anything that you can talk about. You can't answer questions in that business plan that you are presenting. So in that whole vicious cycle, it takes me back to one thing that I think it's fundamental that we should address. If you look at the leadership, which I agree solely has hammered a lot on it, and I think THABISO in the various platforms, I think you have also hammered on that one. If you look at the leadership that we had, and we look at South Africa, if we want to talk about South Africa and the challenge that we have created, it's when we inherited a country after the struggle, I'll just talk 1994. I think the excitement of winning and excitement of liberation got over us. When I say over us, it's the leaders that were given the responsibility to take us forward. And we were all celebrating, we're equal. But what we did not look into was, are we really equal? Who still has the power, the economical power that we need to do? And we need to also look at who took over government and started to move. It was from a liberation fighter into a governor, an administrator, right? And we haven't transitioned yet as South Africa from being a liberation organization into a developmental organization. We're still trapped, and we're still talking quite a lot of freedoms in the, they call it, you were in the trenches and all this. And if you are not aligning yourself to the trenches, accessing these resources that are there makes it a challenge. But whilst we are still having these challenges of South Africa, the world is not waiting. It's evolving. It's moving.
Yes.
And we now have the continental free trade that is saying Africa should now trade amongst itself.
We got excited, and now government is operating like a commercial bank. Mr. MOENG is about to leave us in 5 minutes or even less.
Okay.
Can I let him, just in summing up all that he was saying and everything that you said, like for us to take home and to include in our reports, which we're gonna be sharing with one of the stakeholders is in small development of small businesses, who promised me that they will send me a representative in the next session. So I just allow you, Mr. MOENG, as you leave us, just to say a few words.
Thank you very much. It's getting exciting. I would like to stay, but I can't. I would like to say this, you know, I would like us to move from a point where, like I said earlier, we have these discussions, we have these awesome people. I'm like, I'll sit there and say, wow, it's great ideas and all that. But after that, when this thing ends, what happens? You know, there's got to be a way to come up with a report, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. We met these are the things that we discuss, these are the things that we think are important, need to be attended to. Of course, by whom? Some things obviously might require attention at policy level, or sometimes some things might, how do we form something that allows continuity of this discussion so that we're able to say, but so that we shouldn't have to say, but we discussed it last year and the year before, and nothing happened. And so we come here, we sound clever, we say all the things that we know are problems are standing between us as Africans, as small businesses in Africa, and what they could be. But we don't have the access to the, do you understand? So can we put together a report? Can we say, whom does this report go to? And how do we make the follow-up? Because in a little way, we can make sure that something happens, or at least we make noise. We make noise. I like what Sean said. We must just say the things that need to be said, put them in the report. But you need to help us. We keep saying these things, but nothing seems to happen after that.
Definitely. That's what we're going to do. Fortunately, I work for government, and I know where the report is supposed to go to. I think that is actually one of the reasons I started this platform, because in my space, I will be stifled in terms of what I say. But here, I can get a whole lot of inputs which I'm going to put together and share, both with my principals and also other departments and other stakeholders. We also connect people, also connect companies that have spoken and get into agreements. They've got mentorship here. So it's not only a talk show. We're hoping to make a difference one way or the other.
I wasn't pointing fingers at this particular thing. I really think that Africa has potential, is not stifled only by outsiders, it's stifled by ourselves. And there's so much we can do more and better. But thank you very much. I really appreciate you inviting me to this. I would have wanted to stay, but I hope this is being recorded, so I'll get to listen to the rest of it.
We hope to have you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, Mr. Mabobo, would you want to continue? Sorry about that. Then we'll come
No. It's fair enough. It's understandable. It's not a fault of his own. I mean, we live in a fast-paced world where you have to juggle quite a number of things, and we have to be understanding and accommodating of one another. Sure. That's the art of collaboration. It's not about you as an individual. It's about a collective. Yeah. So what I was saying, Thembi, I think listening and talking and having read all these and having said all these things that we know are the challenges. Like I mentioned, that government as well operates like a commercial bank where there are bureaucracies and roadblocks. And I think I've said a lot about, you know, the funding of businesses by government. I mean, government is not supposed to drive economic development. It's supposed to create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. We have seen in South Africa many a times that the funding institutions that are put there, your NYDA, your Small Business Development, your CEDA, your NEF, they are aligned to particular loyalty to the ruling party. It's a fact. If you are not part of this particular constituency, if you are not in this line, you will not get funding. It's a challenge that you will face, right? So if you have to come out of that and play in the private sector space, as a Black child, you have these challenges that I've mentioned, your lack of collateral and all that. But like I've mentioned, the world is not waiting for us as South Africans to solve our challenges, because leaders are still trying to find themselves on what is it that I'm leading? What is this country called South Africa? Who are South Africans? And what is it that we need to do to grow the economy of South Africa? The African Union came with the Agenda 2063, that this is the Africa we want by 2063, and South Africa is part of the African Union. And from that Agenda 2063, it gave birth to the Continental Free trade agreement or area that says Africa must now start trading, Africans must now start trading amongst themselves. And if I look at the 4 main objectives of the Continental Free Trade Area, if you don't mind, I can quickly sum them up. The first one is create a single continental market for goods and services with free movements of business persons and investments, right? Second one is expand intra-Africa trade through better harmonization and coordination of trade liberalization and the facilitation. The third one is resolve the challenge of multiple and overlapping membership and execute regional and intercontinental integration. The fourth one is enhance competitiveness at the industry and enterprise level through exploiting opportunities for scale production. Let me emphasize that. For scale production, continental market access, and better reallocation of resources. Now, these continental free trade objectives sum up that which we're supposed to be saying as Black businesses and then small businesses, and say, what is it that we need to do ourselves to be able to make sure that these objectives are met? Because South Africa is one of those that ratified the free trade agreement, same as Zambia, where we are sitting. And this has brought us a Southern African Business Development Forum to come up with a solution of creating an ecosystem. Because if you have to work as an individual and as a small business alone, you will not be able to face this task alone. You are at risk and you will not be able to do this. So what we first looked at, Thembi, was choose a country in the Southern Africa where it will enable us to play and have these objectives realized. So we approached the government of Zambia and say, can we have Zambia as a trade, logistic, and tourism hub of the region, where trade is facilitated and we make sure that we interact with others? And because Zambia is it's hosting the capital of COMESA. So when you are in Zambia and you have access to COMESA and SADC, it's a market of over 550 million mouths to feed. When you're in Zambia, you are sitting with almost 2 hours to reach all these neighboring countries that you want to do business with. But what has been the challenge, which if we look at whatever that we are discussing, I'll engage Thabo on this, that if we build in the IT and everything, we still need to get the goods moved from one point to the other on the ground. But we don't have that infrastructure. If you look at the congestion that is at Pipe Bridge, if you are to do business between simple South Africa and Zimbabwe, how long does it take you to have your commodities cross that Pipe Bridge?
REABETSWE, I am sure you have been hearing all the things that the other panel members have been saying. What is your view with regard to the topic?
Hi, I'm REABETSWE. I'll just keep it at that. I'm a business consultant and a public speaker. It's funny, what's just been mentioned like literally 5 seconds ago with respect to infrastructure, something that we were discussing in class yesterday on, trade and now with, logistics, etc. But just going back to what I would bring it back to what I'm, what relates to me as a young individual in South Africa, in Africa. I think it's all great that, policies and, from a high level element or a high level perspective, the policies are done. But I feel like on the ground, it's completely different things. And sometimes I feel like the people that are in discussions, signing documents and signing all these things, they themselves have never had or never run small businesses. So they don't really know the actual real challenges that small business.
Power, that's power.
And also understanding that small businesses, medium enterprises, micro businesses, and a lot of the people that call themselves small businesses are actually micro. On the ground, it's a totally different story. On the ground, I'll get to CEDA, I'll get to NYDA, policies are written, I need to comply, which is another gap that's actually there. I remember sitting in, I think it was a Zoom last week by the AFDB, African Development Bank, and they've seen this huge gap, like with African women, right? There's huge gap between formalized businesses and informalized businesses. And now they're trying to make sure that the informalized businesses are compliant enough so that they can have access to these fundings that you guys, that are there. These every year, government will say there's millions available, but we never find out which entities actually get access. It's because of that huge gap, and there needs to be a gap analysis that needs to be done there. But my point of the matter is, it's great to, for us to talk these big Englishes, it's great for us to talk big statistics, but on the ground, let us understand what those people are going through. Let us understand some of the challenges that they're going through. I remember somebody was saying, if women, there's these women that do beads, for example, the best way that they can get access to markets is if they have their products on Take-A-Lot. We're talking about, understand the demographic of that woman that you're talking about, right? If she's selling these beads that she's selling on the streets or wherever she's selling them, chances are she doesn't have enough capital to stock. Where does she get the capacity for that? And so we need to understand the value chains and be able to bring it down to the level of the SME. As I say, it's great for us to talk and deliberate and talk to these people who are in high echelons. It's great for us to have access to venture capitalists. I know of, like one of my friends is one of the founders of Pineapple Insurance, and they've got capital from, Venture Burn and all these things. They got 5 million rand. Great. They're from privileged backgrounds. But let's go back to the bigger demographic and understand what challenges they are facing. And these are some of my clients. They can't even afford my own services. Do you understand? And this is just an element of, we're guiding them, consulting them to say, look, if you want your business to move from this point to this point, here, this is what you need to do. They don't understand, they don't know. And so as my plea would be, the people at the top, the people that make the decisions come to our level, understand the challenges that we're facing as SMEs in South Africa. They don't have cash flow. So how are they going to some of them can't even afford to remain compliant. So fine, they'll know that they'll need to register at CIPC. This is just the basics. They'll know they have to register to SARS. maintaining that status. They'll know they'll have to have a bank account. And these are the small nyana, what we would regard as stupid, but to that person, they can't afford that amount every single month to remain compliant. And therefore, that means that it becomes a hindrance for them to gain access to this funding that they require. So we need to kind of understand the demographic that we find ourselves in when we're talking about small businesses, understand the context that some of the people that are in, and bring ourselves down to, okay, so where can we help you? So there needs to be sort of consultative element to it so that we can understand where are you getting stuck, and let's find a way to help you then.
Wow. Let me take a hand. It looks like it's getting quite hot. Yes, where do they get the money? They have all these ideas, but it's very difficult for them to access money. I think it's one of the bones we have to chew. That's why people are saying, yes, we need funding, but how do we start without that funding? At the same time, how do the African brothers within our country manage to start those businesses without funding from government, for instance? They make it. I'll take Sarah.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
As indicated there, I'm Sarah Masunga. I think Jabu Mabowa will remember me. The same Sarah from Guyana.
I don't remember you, Mansara. I know you. How can I remember my own mother? I know you very, very well, Mansara.
Yes. Thank you so much.
For those who will want further introduction on who Sarah Masunga is, she is Masingita Masunga's mother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm standing. I'm here as Sarah Masunga. You know, I joined this meeting purely on the idea of getting more information on how I can make a big breakthrough. For the past 21 years, I've been in this industry, manufacturing, but I'm not making a breakthrough. Though it's been said, you know, the name of the game now, industrialization, all those big terms, and I've made attempts to can really get it going. And I think two things came out this afternoon so far from MOENG and now from REABETSWE. From MOENG, I got this thing that we are just talking, and I wouldn't agree more with it. We're just talking. As small business, we are talking, this is what I want to do, but I can't get to be assisted to get it off the ground. If I may give my story, I identified a gap in art and crafts. And gap is that we don't manufacture beads. I'm now talking about South Africa or in Africa. And I made attempts to get machines. Unfortunately, we were defrauded because the machines, though it was a donation, were not competitive. And that goes to show that the point that was raised by Soli is that sometimes there is this thing that if we have and access to the things or resources that you must use. In this case, it is the manufacturing of beads, which would be an answer to people who are in art and crafts. Come to think of it, when we started, we manufactured the beads and the beads because of the quality of the machines. We realized we wouldn't be competitive. And whose fault is it? It's the fault of the people who got the machines from India. And it comes with underlined with that thing that unless we benefit from that, we won't succeed. And that's what happened, because at the end of the day, the same person who manufactured the machines for us came back and he told us stories. We don't have the machines anymore. And we were trying to close that gap, that big gap, that if we are able to manufacture, we would become the middle person. We would cut in a 12, we won't be the middle person. We'll be able to cut the middle person. These are expensive, good people. And if one has to make business out of beads, beadwork and everything that goes with business, let me tell you, we will never, ever realize that, because the very first resource, beads, we're not able to access them. That is why even now, most people are using plastic beads. And it comes down to what REABETSWE just said. I've listened to Jabu many a times, but let me now pick REABETSWE. When she says, it's like we are not understood. We're just filling in forms, and what's happening on the ground, grassroots. It's like people at the top will only, it's not even envisaging that we should really, there should really be a transformation. It's like a game. Okay, it's said today, okay, if we want to, small business must do this. Small business can get funding. But let me tell you, I've said, I don't know if I'm making sense, but we are seated with frustrations to the point where with some of us, I will not give up. That is why I'm going to join discussions like this.
Okay.
I believe, and I hope one day it will happen, that we get down, people get down to understand our frustrations and really help us in whichever manner to break this barrier. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Panel members, there you have it. We can talk at the highest level. I think that's what I also said when Mr. MOENG was talking, that yes, at a high level, there are areas that need to be rectified and things that need to be discussed. Unfortunately, there are some who are in very high level position in government in the platform today who are going to take some of the issues forward. What is it that we can do to advise the people that would love to contribute towards the 55% that is said to be contributing towards formal employment by small businesses? But at the same time, the number of small businesses is declining because people are either no longer able to sustain it, more especially now with COVID. What is it that we can do to help them out? What makes the THABISO was in the platform the other day and he said, you cannot compete with African brothers in this country when it comes to the business that they are in. What can we do?
Because I think that it's very important for us to actually just reference the fact, Mam Sarah, your experience is a common one amongst a lot of us as entrepreneurs. Not for any other reason, but for the mere fact that there is no will to actually just change anything. And everybody's absolutely right. Things are happening at a very high level. Conversations happening at a very high level. And these monies that we talk about are being discussed and they exist at a level that never actually engages us materially on the ground. But just from a simple example of what we did as an entrepreneurial community, and this is why I feel that communities are very, very important. I'm a tech entrepreneur, and I belong to a collective of other tech entrepreneurs, and we've decided to actually start our own community, our own ecosystem, and we call it Darkies in Tech. And the essence of really being able to do this was to really just start to insulate ourselves within a greater group and start a collective thinking process towards actually fixing some of our problems. One of our latest projects has been to really investigate how we can actually start up our own investment fund as members in the form of a stock form. And I know that these things take long. And we've also engaged with that particular possibility of this project taking long on our end. But what we realize is that it's very important, to actually be in control of not only the resources, but also the money that you actually are looking for. And that just makes it easier to move, Mamsar. And that was one of the lessons that we actually learned from why we actually did what we did. So we formed this collective, and what we're doing now is that we're chipping in on a month-on-month basis to try and actually just get up to an amount of 800,000, where we can actually take that money and invest it in one of the other companies or one of the companies within the collective. That's showing the most promise to actually give us an investment multiple or investment return. And those are some of the smart ways that we can actually start to move, because I know we've all been crying for help, and help is not coming. Let's just really just reconcile that, the fact that help is very far and few in between on this journey. And I think that's what REABETSWE was actually speaking about. And I was glad that you have another young person on this platform who's actually saying that, look, let's cut the BS here. We can speak as high level as we want to, but the material nature of this discussion is that it's not playing out at the ground level. I don't know how I'm actually going to access, for instance, the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement. I don't know how I'm actually going to access the TVC, which is actually a venture capital fund that's started by, the DTI and the DTIC together with the PIC. And those are the literal dynamics of what we're facing when we speak about the difficulties in terms of really being able to move. And I think that that's how I started my conversation initially, to highlight that fact that we're in South Africa. The first problem that you deal with is the fact that the market is concentrated. That means that there are gatekeepers in every door that you try and knock on to actually get market access. And I think that's what Mam Sarah actually had to deal with. The fact that she knocked on doors, and the next thing is just a whole lot of snakes that are coming out of those doors instead of people who are reaching out to help you. Sure. And that is also because of the mere fact that I think that as South Africans, we really don't have a sense of how to hold people accountable, specifically officials that are supposed to actually be able to serve us. And that failure, that failure not only in the state machinery, but that failure also in just the civil machinery is why we are actually finding ourselves so frustrated, because if you don't have a bribe to pay someone, you're not going to really get anywhere. You really are not. The context of issues and priorities is so vast that you sit in a position where you sit and you think to yourself, is this dream worth it anymore? And I've had those internal conversations where I ask myself, should I actually not, take a bit of money, try and buy a plane ticket and actually move out to America for about a month and see what happens there? And those are the realities that we actually face. The painfulness of it is that you feel betrayed by an entire system because of the mere fact that you can't move. You can't move. You can't fulfill what you want to fulfill in terms of your own hopes and dreams. And you're literally trying to do the right things at every corner in a system that's telling you to do the wrong things at every corner. And that's precisely why we sit here and we're frustrated at the fact that small business funding is not only critical to the economic question, but it's actually critical to actually just the fulfillment of every South African's dreams. And that's what I feel is one of the underlying issues, around this conversation that we really need to talk about. That look, over and above the fact that it's difficult, but it needs to change. And how do we change it? Yeah. And I think, Mamthembi, you could actually just give us some insights, from your own experiences in government to say that who do we speak to? I've had conversations with Stella and Davini Abrahams. I've had conversations with Kevin Jeffter from CEDA. I've had conversations with Columnist. I've had conversations with Matshidiso Ndlovu, who is the chair of the board of CEDA. And all of them will tell you the same thing, this good story, because look, at the end of the day, if their reputation's on the line here, the reality of it is that it's not playing out the way it's supposed to. It isn't.
Okay, two things that you
Okay, Thembi, just to come in again and finish on that thought which I was saying. The challenges, like they've mentioned, are indeed real. And the Mamsara story, I know, we tried to walk a journey together in the beads, and she designs beautiful beads in Guyana, and it didn't work. I mentored, just for information, for 3 years, young people at NYDA Fund. And what I was saying when I was mentoring there was to say, colleagues, let us try to look outside of South Africa. We have our African brothers that are here. We have the embassies that are there. Are we reaching out to find out what is it that is in demand? What are they running away from that we can use and exploit as an opportunity? Seeing that was not a breakthrough. That's what led to the starting of Southern African Business Development Forum. And when I spoke about the infrastructure that is a challenge, let me get to this point. When we spoke with the government of Zambia, we said we want to promote trade and regional integration and make sure that Southern Africans trade amongst themselves, and it's much more easier. And we want to, as businesses, access these markets. I'll give you an example. Angola, that is just neighboring Zambia. There is no official road that links Angola and Zambia since the independence, no official road. Angola is getting all her food, mostly from Brazil. And the chief amongst what they get from Brazil is chicken. And they spend over $550 million per annum on chicken importation. And when the chicken gets to Angola, it's not fresh. When it gets to the other parts, which is the eastern part of Angola, western of Zambia, it's 9 months after that chicken has been slaughtered, and it's no longer, it doesn't have taste. And if you look at what is required to get there, if you say 400 million for ease of calculation at $5 a chicken, Angola needs about 80 million chickens per annum. and we can produce, because about 2% of that comes from South Africa. The rest is coming from Brazil, from US, and all the other countries. And we said to the government, for us to be able to sell this chicken, we need access to Angola. We need to build roads. But if we ask government to build these roads for us to access the market, it will take another 40, 50 years, because since independence, there's never been these roads. So can you give us an opportunity as business forum to arrange for money to put this infrastructure down? Because you can't expect to sustain business and agro-business in that matter if you don't have these 4 pillars which we identify, which is the transport pillar that looks at your roads, your rail, your waterways, your air, your ICT, your energy that combines both electricity and fuel, and water and sanitation. Now we have included the 5th one, which is now your innovation hubs, where you are able to keep track with the changes that are in technology. So School of Excellence become now a center which is part of it. Government said, if you think you can do that, well and good. We entered into an agreement and we have a concession with them to say, put the infrastructure, recoup, but for us to play, we've got land, and the land that have settlers that can't even produce because of these same challenges. Are you willing to take them on board and become part of this? That's what led to what I was talking about earlier, the ecosystem. To say, well and good, our motto is to drive trade, because this is continental free trade. So from the resettlements that you have, that are 93 dotted around the country, we will aggregate from there. So this is the outgrower scheme. Our commercial farmers, which we approached Afgri to say, come with us, bring your skills, but teach our people to produce. We aggregate from them. We are the market, because Angola has given us the off-takes. DRC has given us the off-takes. But 80 million chickens, you can't get them all alone in Zambia, because Zambia produces about 10 million. It means everyone has to stop eating chicken and we focus on feeding Angola only, and it will not work. So regional trade now talks to, where else do I get it? Now, my African brothers in South Africa, because I know that the challenges of breaking it in the economy of South Africa is tough. So that is what we're talking about, that have a business in South Africa, partner with Zambians and register in both sides, so that we produce feed here. Let me just tell you one thing, just to digress a bit. When you try and compete in this space and get into the poultry, you get at times given inferior feed, and your chicken doesn't grow to the level that will satisfy the market, because you are getting your feed from those that you are competing with. So the secret is produce your own feed and play in your own value chain. It's called from farm to fork. We call it food on the move. So you have to play in those value chains, because SADC has identified these 3 key areas: agro-processing, mineral beneficiation, and pharmaceuticals. So if we don't come together and create these platforms, it will not work. So the market is there. Mansara, on tourism, is what is it that we are selling to our visitors? Because you have visitors that come into South Africa, they will land in Cape Town, and they are told Victoria Falls is another part of their destination, but they don't know it's in another country. Because we don't market these destinations ourselves to bring out these issues and say, let us now sell. So when we know that this is here, and now that we have access to these resources, it is going to be done. We have just started. The 7th of December last year, we were given the go-ahead to implement this program and to drive this regional integration. and to demonstrate that we can do it as Blacks. We don't need to get it from anywhere else. And there has been willing support from the government of Zambia.
Okay.
And this will be an example to the other governments. And with THABISO, it's even makes life easier because these days we are talking now through virtual. I'm in Zambia, you're in South Africa. We need to get more of these technological services to connect our people, fly the drones, get the things and market them, because we are creating this regional integration. So that is what I'm trying to say, that we have spoken, we have identified the challenges, but what is it that we are doing? Because the continental free trade is here, it's not waiting for us. And if we are still to fight, we will have the very same people come and say they are not taking opportunity of this. Let us enhance and build on it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mabobo. Before I take you, Mam Sarah, let me allow Riabetu to also come in. But two things have been mentioned. THABISO indicated that they group themselves together and be able to put money together in order to start, to help each other to start, if I got you correctly. Mr. Mabobo is now coming and saying there's a space wherein, as a South African, you can be able to trade, for instance, in Zambia. And I think it will be a channel wherein we can be able to link companies for them to be able to do business in Zambia. But at the same time, what about those people who do not have money to put in the bucket? They have got an idea. What is it that we need to advise them to do? I'll take Riabetu and then I'll come back to Mam Sarah.
Thank you, Mam Tembi. Is what THABISO speaks about with stockpiles, because I think a lot of the times we see within township areas, so they'll do stockpiles to go on holidays, they'll do stockpiles for grocery shopping, but scarcely do people have stockpiles to help each other with respect to businesses and investing in each other's businesses. So I do think that it's a brilliant, beautiful idea. I do believe that in any business, it's quite important for one to learn to start where they are with what they have. And this is a message that I preach, you know, everywhere, to say, if you have a passion business, so remember there'd be passion businesses where you want to do this, you have this big idea and it requires R1 million capital, but you don't have it. So maybe pause a little bit with the idea and start with what you have where you are. If you are Mam Sarah and you want to now get into the part of the value chain where you're manufacturing the beads, then start where you are with what you have by reselling the beads. For example, I'll just use that as an example. So you'll start with a business that you might not be passionate about at all, but yeah, push the sales, push the numbers, it is in capital. And I think a lot of the times we forget that sales is capital. You know, we tend to think capital has to come from some institution, some bank, but literally, if your business is able to run gas sales, push it in. You know, if it means you need to start small and sell the gotas before you get into poultry farming, for example, push out what's being bought, push out what people are wanting, sell that, use that capital, reinvest it in a different business, and that's literally how the big players do it in their big way. Why do you think Patrice Motsepe is able to start somewhere, then shift into soccer, then shift into restauranteering, then shift into a wine farm? It's literally that. You start where there's capital, where there's movement, and you use that capital to seed it into the next thing. You use that capital to seed it into the next thing. And so I'll constantly preach, and I'll keep on saying, start where you are with what you have, small as it is, and then build on to the bigger things. If you can't be the farmer of the chickens, just go buy chicken from somewhere else, stock it, resell it, until you get to the point where you can purchase your land, until you can get to the point where you have enough capital to then purchase the equipment. You know what I'm saying? So learn to have strategy. And I think that's something that needs to be taught to people of our color, strategy. And learn to think in a structured manner and not just necessarily go with the flow. Have a plan for what you want to do and how much you need for what. That will also incapacitate you to save, which is not really, something that's quite difficult for most small enterprises, because how do you save usokola, but creating that element. And I think also the reason why I like the stokvel part is accountability. You're able to be accountable to the next person, to say, hey Joe, I thought I would be able to save 100,000 within the year, but having that element of accountability and talking to, finding out what you need to get in line, aligning your business to the relevant stakeholders that might be able to assist you to expand.
That's quite good. Aligning what you want to do to the stakeholders, to what the stakeholders that you need to attract, be able to help you out. Mamsara, and then I'll come back to Thabiso.
What I've just heard in from Thabiso, from Jabu and REABETSWE. As I'm talking right now, well, let me start by saying we're on the same wavelength. We're talking the same language. I never stopped because the machines, or because I cannot access machines and whatsoever. As I'm talking, specifically directing this to Jabu, we have just got our application for grading of our entity to be tourist attraction center. And you know what it means. When they're talking Victoria Falls, it means with the right means of marketing. And now we have this Henley Business School. They've just developed the digital ecosystems for us, and the grading, tourism grading, are just waiting for us to tell them, come on such and such a date, because we are now ready. The entity is now will be venturing into tourism big time. So that goes to show that when I say we're on the same wavelength, that was my thinking. That's my thinking as well. That you cannot sit down and be a crybaby. We've got to explore other avenues, and to us, it was tourism. It was tourism, and it's not just going to help a handful of people, 10, 20, but you can imagine the people it's going to touch, because I think COVID did us a very big favor, because we had to maneuver through COVID. And where we are in a few, even next month, I'll be sending you our program, tourism, and we will have been graded. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm getting a sense that she may not be getting what she was expecting. But to a certain extent, there are sort of areas that she can actually learn from. This is an outcry from every other business person who is not currently able to start, for instance. And I know that you have been able to hustle to a point of being able to rule wherever you are in terms of your business. But what I'm learning out of what you always say to us is the fact that silo mentality is the enemy of what makes Black people, or every other business, for instance, to be able to achieve that which they want to achieve. What kind of advice would you give based on experience? Where you are now. Maybe you can just share your story, because some may not have watched previous engagement. What is it that you can share that other people can actually learn from in terms of, collaborations, working together, over and above the Stockfell idea that you have just spoken about?
Ma'am Sarah, just before I get into the gist of it, and I just want to prove how innovation can really just change a lot of the thinking. So I did some work with the Gauteng and West Rand Regional Tourism Board, and of course, politics and shenanigans makes for a very resistant kind of process. And there was a proposition that I wanted to put down there, and I think I want to actually put it down to Ma'am Sarah to actually just think about it. The tourism space that you're in has got very lucrative ends when there's a lot of outsiders coming in. But in terms of really just making sure that locals can actually participate in it, that hasn't really been a core focal point, in any other province outside of Cape Town. And one of the things that I was thinking about is that we need to actually make tourism more palpable. We need to almost put it in people's pockets. And that's when I had the idea to actually have a rewards program that will be really integrated into retailers, where you could have some form of token or card that you would actually then be able to dedicate your savings towards, that would speak to subsidizing your travels when you're actually just, doing some form of tourism. And that was just, part of the idea on how you can actually just fledge that out. I don't know if you have the appetite to actually think about it, but I think Nalo and Ma'am Sarah will actually expand on it off the session. But it really was something that would really have been able to put, I think, tourism and travel in everybody's hands. If you can actually just put it into the nitty-gritties of how somebody shops and does their own consumer, engagement and behavior, I think then you would have actually had a better chance of actually creating a really nice user journey for people to be able to access tourism. But like I said, that's something that we'll talk about. on the end of my entrepreneurial journey and just how to survive, I really have one particular principle that I have had to really just be baptized by, and that principle has been pivoting. You know, when you're an entrepreneur, you stand, I think, on a swivel, and whenever situations and circumstances come that really push you to your limits in terms of your idea and really antagonize what you thought, you have to be willing very quickly to be responsive in terms of how you actually change your approach. End of this journey. And what really happens in that is that you start to actually use that as your north compass, or your true north direction when you are actually, you know, engaging in your journey. You might have started wanting to actually make, you know, beads, and because of the difficulties that you faced in there, it's not, you don't change that end or that goalpost. What you do is that you say, okay, fine, I need to actually take a bit of a roundabout way to actually get there, like REABETSWE actually spoke about, you know, really understanding that are there other, you know, side businesses that I can actually set up as cash cows to
this. I mean, I've done it before, sold veggies, done all sorts of other things and sundry to actually just make sure that I can stay alive in the game. And that's what you really have to actually gear yourself up for when you are taking over taking on the entrepreneurial journey. The willingness to pivot, the willingness to be responsive. In the South African case, one thing that I've actually found is that alignment is very important. You need to actually align yourself strategically with the right people. And you also need to play the game of chess here, where you actually just play them off against each other a bit. Ask yourself the question, what's the incentive for this person to kind of support me? Do I make them look good, you know, on their profile? Do I make them, you know, look appealing to their colleagues? And that's just the nature of how things are. People are self-serving, unfortunately. And you have to actually be able to really just maneuver around that idea. How can I actually align myself with this person's particular intentions, you know, their aspirations? And that's how you get people to really just come and say, oh no, let's tell the good story of Mom Sarah, let's support her. And it's almost like a magical network effect that you need to actually be able to cultivate within yourself, to read people and say, look, I need to actually read this person. Let me spend some time studying like what kind of person they are. You know, some people are generally very altruistic. You know, you meet someone who generally has a good heart and wants to help people. You're lucky. But in most cases, you meet someone who wants to actually look good professionally in their own office, in their own incumbent space, you know. And that goes the same with some of these government funds. Look, some of the lessons that I've learned, for instance, is that it's not always, you know, beneficial for you to be aggressive, because I mean, I go at people specifically in government that are supposed to be actually serving us, to say that, look, why are you just sitting around and not actually doing anything for us, you know? And it's not served me well, because of the mere fact that this is the very same person who's going to actually go and blockade your process so that you don't actually get the help that you're actually looking for. So it's really just, I think, one of the most emotional, psychological, physically challenging things you could ever put yourself through to be an entrepreneur. But, you know, in my experience, it's always been alignment. Find the lions that are on the same mission as you, form a coalition with them, be open about that coalition, and be direct and very intentional. And that helps you to also kind of insulate yourself sometimes within the greater group. We don't have the balance sheets within our businesses to be able to, you know, withstand certain blows. But if you're in a collective of people who actually go and raise a point with a departmental head, or, you know, a bureaucrat, or a certain organization, suddenly now the conversation changes, the reception to the conversation changes. And that's why it's very important to really just build, like Tatama Bobo said, communities, ecosystems. I mean, if I had to ask you, Mam Sarah, now, how many of you are actually, as a collective, in your tourism kind of value proposition? How many local tourist players or potential tourist players can you actually attract into it? Those are things that you need to know, and those are things that you need to actually just build together as a value proposition, to go and have conversations with guys and say that, look, it's in your best interest to join us, because we're going to really just be able to get more out of it than if you're going at it alone. So, you know, the long and short of it is that start with the end in mind, always be flexible and agile enough or responsive enough to actually be able to pivot. And when life is throwing you those lemonades, you know, make lemon. When life is throwing you those lemons, make the lemonade and sell it. You know, after selling it, then buy apples and bananas and make other things. You know, and I think that that's what REABETS was actually saying, that unfortunately we have to be many different things. We have to put our hands in many different pots, because we don't have, I think, the financial resources to really be able to focus on one. And sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to start a chicken farm to actually get to a grocer, you know, or whatever. And that's essentially what I think is the gist of it. So I just wanted to reiterate a point and say that, look, on REABETS' point, absolutely spot on. But again, it's an approach more than it is anything else. It's something that you have to really be able to gear yourself up in to actually be able to do. Find your people in this great room, and really just make sure that you keep growing that community, and that's it.
If I can come in, yeah, I wanted to say the other thing which we must not ignore in this space is to also be on the shoes or in the space of those that we have to get money from, be it the banks and all that. There's this bit word that goes with it, risk, that goes with it. If I give you money, is this money going to come back? Are you going to spend it responsibly? Do you have what it takes for you to use this money and bring it back? So most of the things that we don't have, it's the mitigation of that risk. And ecosystems, like I'm mentioning, give you the ability to de-risk these small businesses that you are working with. Because number one, you are guaranteeing them of the market because you become the off-take. So within your ecosystem, you build it with your financiers to say, sit here, this is where we've got the market. And in mind, like THABISO has said, we started with the off-takes. We've got the off-takes and we have got to sell. Moratorium 3 years, meaning will allow us to build the infrastructure without you wanting anything, and then we'll start selling and then start giving you. But in that 3 years, bring in the skills that are required. We have partnered with Global Gap. Global Gap is a good agricultural practice certifying body that certifies the value of the goods, agricultural goods, for you to be able to sell graded and well-certified goods in the market, not only locally, but in the European markets, because that is one thing which you need to look into. Am I producing something that is graded, the farm management and all that? So we partnered with them to bring in these skills. It takes 3 years for you to get the GAP certification, but because it has been used all this time as a gate for these big institutions, for our retailers to say, we can't buy from you because they are not quality and all that, we needed to deal with that. If you had done it on your own, you wouldn't afford, because they're headquartered in Germany and you have to pay in euros. So collective ecosystem, it has been easy for us to partner with them. It becomes even not felt by those small businesses when they have to be taught, but the skill is beneficial. We brought in a financial institution and said to them, look, give these guys the working capital, but reduce the interest rate, because the reason why the interest rate was so high is because you were mitigating for risk. Now that they've got a market and we are training them and it will be this quality, why do you still consider them a risk? Yet we are all banking with you. So when you give them the money before we even do anything, you'll be the one to deal with the debit orders and all of these things. Government is, can you help us now with the permits and everything? And it has been working great because we all now see the potential of working together. The neighboring country in Angola, we have already been given 10,000 hectares to say, please come and help us and work with us as well on the other side and develop. DRC has got 1 million people. Please help us feed, because we're focusing on building and the minerals, but we don't have agriculture as such. So why I'm saying all this, it's when you start and build your ecosystem, it helps you to de-risk your members. So they don't have to go it alone and go in the hustling. I'm not trying to take anything away from the long route that you want to take. But the question I'm asking is, if I have to hustle and do all these things and I realize that it will be 10 years later, where will the world be in 10 years? Will they be waiting for me to say, no, a black South African was disadvantaged, wait for him, he's still hustling? No, it will not happen. We'll find that by the time we want to get to where we are, the space is closed. Business things have changed. So if we come together and work as a team and in these ecosystems, you know that you are now part of that machinery. For example, maize in Zambia was considered to be what we call a political crop because it's a staple food. So if there's drought, no, we have to restrict the part of maize. Now you have to triple or quadruple the production of maize because it is not only competing with human consumption. It is a key ingredient to chicken feed, maize and soya. It is a key ingredient to malt when you want to brew your beer and all that. So the breweries, the feed and the human consumption are now competing for maize. So there is market already for that, soya beans as well. So I'm saying with these value chains, and you now have to process. So you're building the ecosystem from that small scale farmer. You are not changing anything, you are increasing the size. Why we brought in John Deere, because they work with Agri, they work with John Deere. We said we cannot allow in 2022 to have our small business farmers to be using oxen or animals to plow their field. How long will that take them to now play in the market space, and what business will they leave? What generational business will they leave for their children? So we bring in a system called the Uber a tractor. So you cover the hectareage, you take one tractor, cost effective, you plant all these, you have all these farms that are there. It gives you a combined 10,000 hectares. You send one harvester to harvest 10,000 hectares, but it's divided to the small hectareage of those small farmers that you are working with. They no longer have to worry about this. They have a dedicated market. So this is the system that we are bringing in. You are bringing unemployed graduates that are become qualified, that are lawyers, to say, go do the management accounts for them. That's a job for you. The overheads that are there to pay for legal services and accounting services, you've got business. These are the 10 clients, just manage their books. Because you can't expect the elders to now start doing and fiddling with all these things. These tractors are modern technology. Make agricultural smart, techno-savvy, come operate this tractor. You don't even have to sit in there. These things are remote controlled. Just manage them and do all these things. So that's what the ecosystem has brought. Young lawyers, we are dealing with cross-border trade. Deal with the legal agreements. When I say I will harvest from your 1,000 hectares, what is binding? So these unemployed graduates are there. Our unemployed social workers, we've got a lot of social ills. People are in prison not because they're criminals, but because they were hungry. How do you reintegrate them into society if they are not cancelled? So unemployed social workers are now going in there because we work with the prisons. They have farms, but you can't be in a prison farm forever. How do we reintegrate you into society? Our unemployed social workers go into that space. So that's the ecosystem that we have built. Just to use an example of that ecosystem. Now, we aggregate for all of them and we sell. This is now the trade. It's now Zambia selling with Angola. The bilateral relations of these two countries now kick in. It is no longer an individual who's hustling to say, how do I cross the border? How do I deal with this? This is where government comes in and enable to say, with that bilateral, we agreed on the quota, so this is what I want to sell over. With the financial institutions, standby letter of credits, it is done. So this is what the Southern African Business Development Forum has built as a platform where you can plug in and play. It doesn't matter where you are. What is important is when you have a farm, can we come and assess your farm? Can we take you through the gap certification to make sure that when you produce quality. There's traceability of whatever you are producing. We're able to trace it back to the market, to the farm. That if it is contaminated, we're able to say this batch is from this farm. That's all it says. Now, if you bring in investors, because we're starting with the construction of this infrastructure, where are they going to sleep? What are they going to eat? So that's why we brought in tourism into this. Your beds and breakfast now have a market where our contractors and everyone have to sleep, have to eat, they have to be entertained. So where do they get entertained? It's a 25-year concession, meaning there will be movement of those that are working. Some will find families here and all these other things like I did. I'm now in Zambia and I found the happiness in Zambia from South Africa. And I can assure you Zambia is a warm place. I can speak a bit of Zambian language. So I'm saying, if we don't open our eyes and think that the challenges are in South Africa and we'll find solutions in South Africa only, it might not happen very soon. We might be unable to even hand over to the next generation something that we have built. They might still inherit the poverty we inherited. How do we break the cycle? Is this solution that we are talking about, that create an ecosystem that deals with regional integration, because you've got the skills, you've got the ability, and you've got the willpower. All you needed is just a platform to actually spread and spread your wings. Africa, it's a youthful continent.
Yeah.
And if you are to sit, let me use this example and use it bluntly. If you are to sit and you look at our cabinet in South Africa,
Okay,
generational mix, it's still something that I don't want to even go there. So, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Let us build on what we have already created. It's a platform. We create an ecosystem.
Okay.
We de-risk ourselves.
Mr.
Thank you.
I have a question then that I think THABISO also raised. I do not know how to get into that which you have just explained now. What is the first step that one is supposed to take, a business owner, for them to be part of this very good, nice, glossy kind of an idea? It's not an idea, or this trade, this free trade that have already started implementing in other countries.
What we are doing, Thembi, first and foremost is what we have created. Are we transforming? You now know. The second part is you now know the one who is talking about it. It's where do I get the contacts? How do I follow up? The third point is where can I join if there are webinars and training sessions to do all these things? That's where we start. We'll be having informative webinars with the global team, Global Gap team, starting this February. I will share the dates with you,
okay,
so that you are able to share them with those who are in agriculture and will want to benefit and know what Global Gap is all about and what is it that you need to do to get certified. They are free webinars, but very informative. So that when you start with the journey, you know they are looking at fruits and veg, aquaculture, livestock, and rice. Those are the things that we'll be looking into, but we'll be starting with fruits and veg as the thing to be certified.
Okay.
The third aspect is there is a website. Our platform is not where you have to pay or whatever. No, you come on board and you say, this is who I am. It's a plug and play platform. Tell us what you need to do. We will help you do it, because we know the challenge that we have gone through. If you ask a South African to say, I will need 10,000 for you to do that, you have blocked a lot of people. Because it is not easy to get access to those resources. But what we do, because we create an ecosystem, we say, we will create 1, 2, 3, and this will be your repayment plan. We offset the cost of the tractors at harvest, right? Because we don't expect you to say, pay a deposit when we bring a tractor into your farm. No, because you will not have it. But because that maize is important for our value chain, we'll have to give you the input. We have to give you the fertilizer and the tractor and pay for the tractor. But you are paying at harvest. Now you've got something. You can't say, I can't, right? So that is how we build each other in an ecosystem. And this is what our platform is doing. To mention another way, to use them as an example, Tim. Cyclone Anna now, and there's the other cyclones, have again devastated our neighboring countries. Mozambique is hit, Malawi is badly hit, part of Zim, part of Zambia, parts of Madagascar that are in the SADC region. Where are we supposed to get the food that is the aid that we need to give to our people? Because they've lost almost everything. We get these things from the USA. You want to tell me we don't have farmers within the region that can supply fellow farmers? But because we have this notion, this is Zimbabwe, this is this, this is that, I can't buy from there. We forget that we are in Southern Africa. And we are a region called SADC. That has to trade with the other regions of Africa. That's what continental free trade talks about. So when you start talking and you are saying, this is so and so, this is so and so, you are chasing away potential and business partners. out of the country.
Mm. Any question, any comment? I think you have said a mouthful. We'll be definitely sharing those information on our social media platforms, mostly Facebook and also LinkedIn, so that people can also be made aware. THABISO, REABETSWE, anything to add?
I mean, there's still, I think, the opportunity that technology presents to actually decentralize sources of financing as a whole and feeding them into these new ecosystems that are actually emerging. Decentralized financing, which is a blockchain-based form of financing, can really just get money from the blockchain communities that exist out in the world, especially the affluent countries, and funnel liquidity into all of these things that are happening in Africa. We're currently working on a project now to actually start the first blockchain-based mutual bank, where you can actually get decentralized pools of liquidity from foreign markets into Africa, so we can actually start banking the underbanked, underserviced, and unbanked. Really just start to create these opportunities to really just create or channel capital into the right people who we care about as a community, people who we deem that, look, they can actually get access to financing from us. That's another thing that we need to actually just take into account, the fact that institutional financing is really racial. It's given to you through a racial lens. Bobo, you guys in Zambia are very fortunate that you actually had the political will from all ends of the spectrum to actually do that. And those are some of the things that I've heard from some of my Zambian colleagues telling me about the things that are happening out in Zambia. That there's a real drive there to actually turn things around for the Zambian economy. And that's a good thing. In any other state on this continent, you actually have a real major crisis of being able to really get the same political will. I'll make a case in point. There were 4 coups in African states in the past 6-9 months. And those are things that threaten this agenda that you actually speak about. But look, the gist of it is that there is the ability to really get these things done, I think in a much quicker time, really just leveraging off of innovation. And I want to actually speak to the people like Mamsara when we actually have our infrastructure up to say that, Mamsara, you said that you want to actually buy machinery, come through and actually get a blockchain-based loan, which is going to be far cheaper in terms of just the cost of the capital than any other thing. And those are the ideas that we as young people, the likes of REABETSWE, the likes of me, want to actually start pushing into these conversations to say that we're speaking about timeframes. And I think that Bobo spoke about it so well when he said that, look, nobody has really 10 years to actually sit and wait for you to go and actually get the money, you know? And how do we actually cap those lead times? How do we make sure that we can shorten that investment horizon for anybody who's actually going to be giving you money? And it's definitely possible. The global community has proven that it is possible. It's just that young people are engaging with these ideas on a day-to-day basis. And we're finding no form of expression to actually go and put them to use, because you speak to your leaders and it's a difficult thing. So like I'm saying, I think that innovation is a very critical part of this conversation, because we're finally finding ourselves in I think, an era where you don't have to take 50 years to actually build a great company anymore. You don't have to take 50 years to actually just get your machinery, Mamsara, and actually just realize the dream. The time frames for the dream to actually be realized are much shorter. And they're brought about because, again, the world is more agile and responsive, and people are more engaging, and you can suddenly now decentralize conversations around who you're speaking to, who can give you money, and where you'll get that money from. And that is the beautiful part about really being in this era of the world, the digital era. And that's why I'm actually putting it on the table. The whole point of this discussion was to really speak about, you know, the capital story versus starting. I think that they are symbiotically mutual, you know. You also want to know that if you've got money, or if you're going to start, that you'd eventually get money at some point and really be able to scale your effect and scale your business and really grow, because we start these businesses with a bit of an aspiration. So on my end, I think that that's what I really want to bring to the table. That look, everything that we've discussed is, contrary to the difficulties, it's definitely possible at this point in time to really get things done in a faster rate, to really get that capital, to get the dreams going, and it can be done. We just need to start engaging with the world at a different level. And Mamsara, I hope you're actually listening when I actually speak of blockchain, because that's one of the avenues that you could really just start to actually question, how do we actually, engage with that specific point of technology at a point where we can actually get some form of benefit. And I'm telling you that it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. We can funnel funds from foreign crypto markets into South Africa, for instance, and really get it out as cash. It's very easy to do. It can actually happen in the space of weeks.
You must actually tell us more about that and educate us about that, because I believe there are so many people who would want to start something, but they don't know where to get the funding, like we have indicated. So I guess it's something that we need to be working on. We are having load shedding on our side, but we are fine. REABETSWE.
Yeah, just in closing, look, I really appreciate, what we're speaking about with respect to blockchain. I actually had to research about this and go to classes and find out what's the thing. But I think later on, let it be something that would be a conversation. But I think what THABISO was just mentioning now, the gap between the two generations, I feel like there's things that, the more seasoned individuals have knowledge about and wisdom, I guess, about, that we still need, but also within the conversations that the seasoned individuals have, they do need the young spice, because of issues such as this, such as blockchain, issues such as how do we use technological innovations to then accelerate either access to funding for people? How do we use what these ideas, these fresh ideas that we have, and work in conglomerates, work together? Because it's great that we have a platform where Zambia and Africa and Angola can work together. But, at the end of the day, some of the stakeholders would be the unemployed youth. Do they know about this? How do you access that information? Because for me, it was like, oh, okay, so this is a brilliant idea, but is there access to this information? And with anything and everything, my key concern is the access to the knowledge about, about whatever. Do the relevant people know? Do these unemployed agricultural students know? Do the agricultural farmers in South Africa know that, what, let's get up for this, so that we plan, so that, there's this opportunity. We can actually sell our stock to this place. Let's gear up to it. And it goes back to what we said earlier, to say conversations are had at a high level on the ground. Let that be a chain and a link, so that the guys on the ground can capacitate themselves and get themselves ready. Let the information trickle down to the relevant people, and let us not just be people that's just concerned about, that road, because that's also something that's happening in South Africa, where it's just a matter of, that's facing, transport, road, and what. I did the road for 3 million. I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? That we need to also understand. That's why it goes back to on the ground. So that's just a closure, all I can say. for today.
No, the day Mr. Mabobo came to talk about the Africa, the free trade agreement, that was one of the questions we were saying, and we have already agreed that we're going to partner with them when COVID is done, over and done with. We're going to make sure that we go down to the ground and engage with the ladies who don't have access to this kind of platforms, just to make sure that they get to know about it. We're going to be starting a graduate program where we're going to have graduates registering so that they can have information like this and be able to link with organizations like that of Mr. Mabogo. Aviation industry, we have already engaged with them. So yeah, we are building blocks slowly, but we're getting there. When it comes to the blockchain, you guys need to come back honestly so that you can tell us about how we access this funding, or how do we use blockchain to be able to do fund our businesses, or even to make money, not necessarily funding our businesses. But I think it's something that we need to be talking about. Thabiso, you have got the last word, I know. No
Look,
question.
Mamtemi, I'd just like to say that I'm happy that we're having these conversations. I think the building block of any form of transformation is a conversation. That's fundamentally what's beneath the surface. But at the end of the day, I also want to really make it quite clear. I always say this, and you've always heard this from me, the fact that young people are really just well-positioned to really answer some of these questions and some of these challenges. The crisis that we're facing is really from the resistance that is coming from the top. Me and REABETSWE, I mean, I've known REABETSWE through social media for a very long time, by the way, right now. And that's just the power of how we can actually start moving. As an example, in reference point to this conversation, we're not closed off. We're having the conversations. We're really just posturing, having these ideas. And we know how to actually get things done, because it's not even an age thing. It's just an era thing. It's a sign of the times that we're living in, where that's just how young people are geared up at this point in time. I want to actually just compel every person who's on this call, this chat. Let's really decentralize the conversations, even beyond this point. Let's speak, let's engage, let's really just try and actually get mobility behind these ideas. And that's what I think Dr. Naidu actually said when he came on. Look, we speak, it ends here. Like, what do we do beyond this point? We mobilize. We go, we speak to other young people, we speak to other old people. We tell them the ideas that we actually have to actually change things. We ask them that if a platform is created like this one, would they be willing to actually come on board on a Saturday at 4 o'clock, where most young people actually, somewhere having a social joy there. That's what we have to actually start doing proactively and meaningfully enough to say that, look, let's mobilize people behind these ideas. Let's mobilize people behind these platforms. Let's really just start getting the transition in motion. And this is where I come in, and this is one thing that I'm very passionate about. That's why I'm involved in a lot of things. I love speaking to other entrepreneurs. I love speaking to other young people and really just changing the status quo around this. I think the stereotypes on both ends of the spectrum. But we all know that the situation is untenable, and it cannot be allowed to actually continue any further. Whether we are, speaking of a Zambian question or whether we're speaking of a South African question, it is critical that the opportunities start to actually find expression, and materially so, in ordinary people's lives. And I think that that's what is the most important, principle of this mission. The fact that it has to find expression in ordinary people's lives. That's just my parting shot on it. And I want to thank everybody who's actually taken time to come on board and taking their Saturday to actually just, allow themselves to be persuaded.
Sure. Thank you so much. Mamsara has already shared her numbers and her contact details, so we're going to be sharing them with you after the session. Mabobo, your parting shot? Yeah, but if you want to have a second bite, you're still welcome to. We still have some time.
For me, it's like we have said, the start of a journey. You take these baby steps, and I think because Are We Transforming started almost late last year, and we are now we're starting at a very good note. And I will really plead that we keep time as the same time, Saturdays afternoon at 16. Reason being, those that are serious will be able to choose on whether to listen to that which will transform them, or sit and watch a soccer game on TV, or sit at the Chisanyama and have a ball with friends. So you are able to now have those that are serious and want to work and be able to be assisted. Because when you have to take a journey up, you need to minimize the load. I think you know that when a plane has to fly, the load is the number of kgs that you have to take with you gets limited. So you're able to take off. Then you will be able to move much more quicker when destination you have arrived at, you're not coming back. You're able to get another plane, and then all of a sudden there will now be constant movement in that. But for takeoff, I will be happy if those that are willing can be voluntary and come, and those that are not yet willing, they will learn from those that have had and have the hunger for success. And I just want to wish everyone a happy weekend, and thank you so much for listening to us talk.
Thank you so very much. Last week we learned that better less, but better. The numbers are honestly not really a big deal. I always say to the people who come, numbers is not a big deal because somebody is going to share with another and keep on coming. So we really appreciate that you have made time. REABETSWE, are you fine? You're good. Okay. My take home here is that you don't have to wait for you to get funding. I believe the same way we are able to borrow money to buy things that are not necessarily of value, we can be able to get money and buy a crate of eggs and sell it, and then it multiplies, like REABETSWE has said, and even THABISO, that you can start small and be able to grow your business towards something that you actually want. Stockpile, we call it now THABISO. Stockpile is one of those things that you can look into, but make sure that you do it with people that you trust, that are not going to rob you. Even sharing your ideas, share with people that are going to actually support you, not necessarily want to look good at your expense. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is alive, and Mr. Mabobo will be able to assist, and we are available to connect you with them. Our email is arewetransforming@gmail.com. arewetransforming@gmail.com. You can also check us on Facebook, where Are We Transforming? LinkedIn, Are We Transforming? Then you can drop your contact details there. But over and above that, allow me to thank all the panel members and Mr. MOENG in absentia. We appreciate that you are taking time. And when we ask you, I believe you're going to be available to come and share your ideas, things that we need to learn about. I am Thembekile Felicia Makubele, and Are We Transforming? Looks like we're getting there. You must have a lovely, lovely, lovely evening. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and also follow and like our LinkedIn and Facebook page. See you next time.